Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. In this video, we're going to talk about the title is to emulate to shine, or does the shine create emulation? So, what does it mean to emulate? Well, it means to reflect, right? But then what is shine, right? Does the sun shine? If you not take a light and bounce it off a mirror, does it not shine? So on and so forth, because it's a reflective surface. And then when that light shines back, does that create emulation, right? Right? Because what happens is, yes, you can have a zigzag pattern, right? Or a maze. So therefore we use the sun's rays in order to reflect off something else, to bounce onto something in order to raise it up. Why do I say it like this? Well, I'm sitting here at the lake and, well, the sun shines, but it reflects off the water, as you can see right there. Now, because the sun is reflecting off the water, the leaves, I could go ahead and show you here, at the base of the lake, not only do they put this right back here, reflect, right? Or not just refract, but the water refracts, the light reflects back up underneath the leaf so that it could create more food through photosynthesis, so on and so forth, etc. Now, as you move up in life, things become easier. And when you move up in life, they say things like, oh, well, money makes you soft, money makes you lazy, so on and so forth. And if you look at a tree, that can be very true, because as you progress in life, right, you start to become more like the leaf instead of the bark and the roots, right, which has a strong base and foundation. And then as it goes up the trunk, so on and so forth, it starts to become softer but more durable and malleable, right? Have you ever taken a watered tree or a branch off of a watered tree, so on and so forth, like a twig, so on and so forth, that had a leaf attached to it, and bend it, right? It's very flexible, whereas the bark is not, right? Whereas the stem is not as flexible. It's very rigid, it's very firm, so it's structured, but it may be too structured, right? But then if you go a little bit lower and you touch the roots, if the soil has been watered, the roots remain flexible and adaptable in order to provide the nutrients to the stability of the stem. Right now, for those of you who like to do STEM projects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, so on and so forth, this would be a philosophical understanding for you, right? Because as you go up on the totem pole, Native American term or Indian term, whatever you want to use, right? Yes, if you rely too much on what's below you, you become extremely soft, but you also become extremely malleable, but dependent on everything else to keep you up and alive. So if you look at the tree, for instance, right, the leaves are very malleable, but they're not as strong as the stem and the bark and the core of the tree, right? They're malleable like the roots, but they're not as durable as the roots, right? So on and so forth. They cannot progress any further because they cannot grow anymore because, well, as martial artists once said, they now have a full cup, right? But the roots continue to grow. Now, why is that? Because roots will continue searching in order to keep the rest of the body of the plant alive, right? They stay malleable, they stay durable, they stay flexible, so on and so forth, but they also stay firm, just like the stem reflects the roots. Except the stem has to hold up everything else, so it has to be more rigid in its structure and its durability, which doesn't give much leeway left or right in order to go ahead and do certain things. This requires, well, being malleable. But if it was too malleable, then the other branches and the leaves and everything else would not be able to sustain itself completely as a full head of hair on a body, so on and so forth, right? So the roots that rely on both things, right? Because if the tree falls over, that amount of force, weight, leverage, so on and so forth, can actually pull roots out of the ground, leaving less resources for the stem to create flow for the rest of the tree. Now, when the sun is emulating, right, the branches reach out, the leaves and the petals open up, so on and so forth, to capture the light, to convert that into energy. Why is this all important, right? Well, think about this. If your children or if others look up to you, right? Think of yourself like a tree, right? If they're just looking at your facial features or your knowledge, think of this as your tree leaves, right? Your wisdom, your insight, so on and so forth. It's very malleable, understanding, and adaptive, right? Now, as you move further down, are you like a flimsy branch on a tree? Or are you like the stem and the bark? Meaning, are you in shape? Do you look physically like what some people would want to look like, right? You know, people sometimes take off their shirt and they have some decency to them, so on and so forth. And as you can see here, the tree's bark is actually structured a certain way. Why? Well, just like, well, if you look at dirt, so on and so forth, when runoff happens, it not only creates a pathway for the water to actually move down and stick to the tree, but it also creates pathways so that it could get all around it. And I don't know if you could see, but there's a little branch starting right there, so on and so forth, with leaves and everything, in order to one day be like a part of the tree itself, right? Because it gave birth to something else. Now, the roots will maintain everything as long as it's watered correctly. Thankfully, we're near a lake, so it has plenty of that. And then, of course, we have the stem that provides everything else. Think of this like the pipe work in a house, right? Pipes are not very malleable, right? So on and so forth. They have to be firm. They have to be rigid. Why? Because they have to take something that is adaptable, that can mold into almost anything, that's also powerful, that can normally burst pipes in the right conditions and maintain that structure and fortify it in order to make sure that the transfer is complete, right? Or the process of travel is complete, right? So this also reflects the pipework in a house, the ligaments in your body, just like the bone structure, so on and so forth. Your bone structure, although may be porous, it has to be firm, just like this, in order for you to be able to move, right? Like the roots move, so on and so forth, to find resources, etc., under the ground. And then, of course, the leaves itself and the branches that remain malleable, flexible, adaptable, so on and so forth, in order to gain more knowledge, energy, and create more. Now, without the structure, without the bone density, so on and so forth, would you be able to move around? Probably, maybe. It depends, right? I mean, how many kids play with slime these days, right? Or if you remember the movie Flubber, right? It can move around, but only but so much, but it didn't have a rigid structure to it. The rigid structure not only provides a fortified ability in order to carry the weight that is presented, so on and so forth, but it's also able to have structure around it, similar to the way the bark has structure around it, right? So if you take off your shirt, so on and so forth, and you're very smooth and soft, so on and so forth, and some trees are smooth and soft, there's going to be a lot of runoff, right? Because it's going to be hard for things to stick. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you take off your shirt, so on and so forth, and let's say someone's eyes light up and they go, wow, that person looks like they're in shape, so on and so forth, or damn, they look good, or man, I want to look like this guy one day, or I want to look like her one day, etc. You know, it's the same concept, because as you can see, trees also emulate one another. It's not just this type of tree that has this type of barking or pattern on it, so on and so forth. I'm sure if you go to oak trees or redwoods, so on and so forth, you'd be able to see a similar pattern, and that is for a particular reason. Now, when it comes to the understanding of, well, growth and everything else, well, if your children or other people look up to you and they want to emulate you, isn't it correct to put yourself in the best possible position, place, structure, so on and so forth, environment, or create that for yourself by doing it yourself, first testing it, similar to as a baby plant? So once again, By the lake here, you can see that there's baby plants, so on and so forth, and they're trying to grow as well, just like the bushes, the bristles, so on and so forth, etc. Right? And then, of course, you have the trees that provide shelter to the canopy and everything else. Well, that's called the canopy, right? The shelter that it provides. The thing is, what are you trying to come across as? Are you trying to not look as though you, or how should I say this? Are you trying to present yourself in one way but be someone else when you're not? What do I mean? Well, if you're trying to fit in into a community, right? Be yourself and add your uniqueness to the community. Do not try to emulate the community. Look at what the community pays attention to and then shine yourself. And I'll go ahead and quote Brene Brown as well as Coach Carter and a couple other people. But to sum it up, when you shine, it gives people the other ability to shine themselves. See, if you're in an area that's very strict, so on and so forth, or how many of you have been around children and they get told taboo languages or words are bad, so on and so forth, but they got the cool uncle or the cool dad or the cool mom or the cool aunt or cousin or whatever, and every once in a while they'll slip up and they'll say a curse word, and then the little kid says it and it's like, oh, and it's like one of those things. It's like only between them can they say those taboo words, right? And it becomes interesting, but it also creates a bond, right? And that bond fortifies over time, similar to the bark on the tree, because eventually the child or the person might surpass you or might come up to your level, and you could really start hanging out together, keeping in mind that you also can help one another as the bark on the tree provides, well, a route for the water to flow so that it could keep the stem and everything else alive, right? So in actuality, everything works together with the branches as well as the leaves. So if you're trying to succeed in the pursuit of freedom, and maybe you're building a family, building a life, building a business, finding a wife, whatever the case may be, stole that from Tony Robbins. But if you're trying to do any one of those things, I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you want to be around people that not only want to emulate you somewhat, but the only reason they're emulating you is because they're scared to shine themselves, right? So they have this imitation factor, right? They'll go ahead and, which is what emulation is, right? To a certain extent, right? To emulate is one way if you look at it a certain thing, right? Oh, that has a lot of illumination or it emulates a lot of light, so on and so forth, etc. But then to shine is another thing, meaning to be bright, right? What is being bright? Well, creating uniqueness, being creative, so on and so forth. Hence the expression earlier, by adding your own uniqueness to the culture in which you're trying to fit into. Because let's face it, people know when someone's faking the front, right? You can write a book, right, or hire a ghostwriter to write a book for you, but because you look a certain way and you could present a certain way, that doesn't mean that the person that actually wrote the book can do the same thing. They may be a wordsmith, but they may not look the part. But then again, if the wordsmith were to just be able, to get a little encouragement in order to shine, well, then you and the wordsmith can now both come up in life, right? Because you can help each other, right? I mean, let's take the example of Lil Wayne and Eminem. Lil Wayne said something about Funyuns, and Eminem came out and said, damn, I wish I came up with that, so on and so forth, right? They're both in the same cultural genre, right? They both emulate each other because of the genre that they're in, but they also gave each other props and kudos when they came up with something, so on and so forth. They did not imitate, right, one another, i.e. copy. What they did was they complemented one another, not by speaking jealousy, but by saying, damn, he's really creative. I wish I was that creative. That's a loose translation for some people that didn't understand what the statement meant, right? Giving him props, in other words, right? And so you have to understand these things if you are to grow in life, right? Or to not just succeed, but move forward and gain not only wisdom, but insight, right? Because if you stay stuck in wisdom in the middle, right, between knowledge and insight, well, then you're going to stay there for quite some time. See, the only way you gain insight is by putting your ideas not only to the test, but standing up to your own selfishness as well. Remember the word stupid, so on and so forth, broken down would be stand up to your own selfish ambitions, so on and so forth, right? Because you have the id in there, right? The ID, which comes from psychology, which goes into ego, super ego, so on and so forth, etc. So if you have your own ideas, present that in a creative way, mixing it in with the culture, becoming creative, i.e., remixing, so on and so forth, not tactically acquiring or borrowing, so on and so forth, etc., but creating your own thing, right? How can I present in such a way that not only emulates but allows me to shine? And if you remember Coach Carter, it is not our dark that most frightens us, it is our light that most frightens us, right? Our ability to shine ourselves, to give ourselves the ability, the strength in order to present ourselves to the world in the way which we want to be accepted, right? Most people, we'll talk about LGBTQ for a second, they have the expression they're in the closet because of, well, whatever reason. See, who was it? It wasn't Dr. Jordan Peterson, but Darren Brown once stated that once you realize how seldom people think of you, you'll realize how seldom they do. So once he came out, so on and so forth, he realized that it didn't matter because, well, at the end of the day, as I used to say, I'm not sleeping with them, so who cares, right? And then, of course, you have other people that will say other things. Oh, well, you can't do that because it's bad according to this. Really? And who told you that? Did you look at all the things, or did you just listen to somebody because you were being lazy, right? It's like not wanting to go to the gym or not going to want to walk, so on and so forth, because you're lazy, right? One of the things I tell a lot of men that are coming up in the world, and sometimes I approach them differently because men that want to be men, so on and so forth, masculine, so on and so forth, with a balance of femininity, have to understand the world that they're coming into, right? If you wish to obtain a wife and create a family, are you willing to carry the same weight that she's willing to carry when she carries your offspring, right? So I'll have them put on a weighted vest, so on and so forth, right? Doesn't matter how much weight. We start with baby weights and then we work our way up, no pun intended, right? But the males will carry a weighted vest. Why? Because it's going to emulate what the woman is going to do that will shine back at him when he sees that bundle of joy. Now, what happens during that whole process? Well, the woman not only breaks her back, so you might want to strengthen yours if you have a spine or not. And then, of course, from there, you want to also be in shape. You want to be able to have the energy to move around because now what's one is now supplying for two, right? As a protective barrier, as well as a test to see if they can bear the weight, right? Because what happens is, yes, you work so hard for certain things, but if you're not willing to go the distance, as they say, right? To see what that person's going to go through, because the only way you know somebody is by walking a mile in their shoes, then do you really know what you're getting yourself into when you put your thingy in another thingy and it creates life, right? So, when a woman is pregnant, most people know this already, she gains weight over time, right? It's not just because of the eating habits. She literally has a physical human or specimen or whatever you want to call it, fetus, in her body, right? And so, because the two things wanted to come together, right? Now you have to take care of it, right? So we do this exercise. We're going to go on a hike or we're going to go on a run, but you're going to put this vest on, so on and so forth. They're going to talk, we're all going to talk, etc., so on and so forth during this. Reason being is because, well, you still have to learn how to communicate while still bearing the weight, right? And now what happens? Well, you have the ability to take the vest off. See, when they're pregnant, they don't, unless obvious reasons, right? You could always see a doctor about that reason. Now, if they choose to continue with the baby, right, then you're going to have to carry more weight, right? And so are they. And then, of course, they're going to have to do other things, and so are you. And if you don't have the energy to do those things, then you're going to be in for a world of chaos, right? Because if you're prepared, right, or they say those who stay ready don't have to get ready, right? So this exercise is to teach those males how to stay ready so that when the time happens, they don't have to get ready, so on and so forth, right? They're prepared. Babe, I got you. Don't worry. Oh, you don't know what it's like to go through this, blah, blah, blah. Actually, there was this one time that I went out with a group of guys, so on and so forth, call it a road trip, whatever the case may be. And we had vests on, so on and so forth. We were talking, we were jamming, so on and so forth. I know exactly how hard you got it right now. And I know you don't have the choice to get rid of it. If you do, or not have the choice, I probably shouldn't change that. I should probably change that, I should say. Although you do have the choice to get rid of it, I don't want you to get rid of it. What I would like is to assist you, to quarterback you, to coach you, so on and so forth. Because yes, I've been in your shoes. I've walked those miles, so on and so forth, for an allotted amount of time with all different types of weight, so on and so forth. And because of that, I understand somewhat, a little bit, a speck of what you're going through and the way your body's not only changing, but how much weight you have to carry, right? So I'll protect you as long as you protect us. Because last time I checked, a baby is 50-50, right? Fair is fair, right? So when it comes to this understanding, remember, without the roots, there would not be the stem. Without the stem, there would not be branches. Without branches, there would not be leaves. And without the leaves, well, how would you ever capture the light? And so when you see your bundle of joy come out, so on and so forth, the smile on their face is the light, right, that shines and comes back to you, right? Because they emulate you now, right? They reflect you. Oh, I want to be like mommy. I want to be like daddy, so on and so forth. But then do you bring them joy or happiness, right? Do you provide stability as the stem? And are you as flexible as the branches and the roots? Because now they have became the leaves that you wish to provide for, right? So yes, be firm, but be soft. Be soft, but be firm. What does that mean? The roots are soft, but they're firm. The stem is firm, but the roots are soft. The branches are soft, but they're firm. And then the leaves itself is what you wish to keep up. So if you guys enjoyed this episode of Finding Freedom and this philosophical breakdown, so on and so forth, for teaching purposes, and to bring in understanding and inkling of understanding of somewhat what's going on, I'm going to be putting together a martial art style that not only emulates Bruce Lee's JKD, so on and so forth, but it also encompasses a lot of different terminologies as well as, well, STEM, right? Technology. And I'm calling it SDK. And for those of you who are in the tech field, you understand what SDK means, right? It's a way of integration, right? And making sure all applications get along together according to Google, so on and so forth. So I'll be working on that, and I'll be putting that out soon with a buddy of mine. Hopefully we integrate and work together on this, and then maybe we could create something beautiful, so on and so forth. We got a little bromance going, so don't mind us. Anyways, that's a little sarcasm for you guys out there. But till next time, my friends, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.